Hola, este episodio del podcast de More Fluent English se trata de cómo hablar de un evento que ocurrió en el pasado, específicamente cómo conoció a tu mejor amigo o a tu esposo o esposa. Ok, sigamos. I'm going to share my screen and I will read through the transcript and stop along the way to share some vocabulary with you or to show you some extra material, a picture or a website or something. So, let me go back first. I always do this. When I share the screen, I forget to make sure that the sound is okay. All right, here we go. So, More Fluent English Podcast, episode 46, Telling How You Met Someone. Hola, friend. Welcome back to the More Fluent English Podcast. How did you meet your spouse or best friend? Can you narrate past events to describe something to your audience or colleagues? Bienvenido a mi podcast para ayudar a los emprendedores a mejorar su fluidez con el inglés. Me llamo Joy de More Fluent English y quiero ayudarte a mejorar tu inglés para crecer tu negocio. Si quieres, hay una transcripción con vocabulario de este episodio en la página web morefluentenglish.com. También puedes ver un video de este episodio en mi canal de YouTube muy pronto y aquí estás. Si te gustaría hablar conmigo en inglés sobre este u otro tema, únete a la membresía de More Fluent English y conviértete en una communicator. Este grupo por ahora está cerrada, pero en febrero lo vamos a abrir de nuevo. Ok, ahora sigamos con el episodio en inglés. Hi, friend. Today's episode is part of a series of podcasts from my self-assessment workbook called 30 Topics to Gauge Your Fluency and Practice Your Use of English in Conversation. It's a great resource to get you to think about what topics you can talk about in English. You can download the workbook for free at my website, morefluentenglish.com. Each of the topics in the workbook is or will be its own podcast episode, like this one. This is topic 23 that asks, how did you meet your spouse or best friend? This topic is really an exercise in narrating a past event. I'll tell a couple stories to answer the question from the guide and to illustrate how to talk about something that happened in the past. I met my husband shortly after I moved to Alabama from New York. And let me stop right there or here to talk about the verb met. In Spanish, we would use the preterite form of the verb conocer here. So, conocí a mi esposo o el marido. Usually, we translate the verb conocer as to know in English. But when we want to say that it's the first time we knew of the person, we actually use the verb to meet, which of course in the past tense is met. Okay, so I met my husband, Scott, shortly after I moved to Alabama. I used to live in New York State, for those of you that are new, which is in the northeast of the United States, and now I live in Alabama, which is in the southeast. My oldest son and Scott's oldest son were in the same grade, and we're both involved in Cub Scouts, which is like Boy Scouts, if you're familiar with that organization, but for younger boys. Scott introduced himself to us at one of the first meetings we attended. Our sons became friends, and my ex-husband and I became friends with Scott. In fact, when we moved to Alabama, my ex-husband had a hard time finding a job in his field. So my current husband, Scott, hired him to work with him. They worked together for a few months until my ex-husband did get a job in his field. After that, we sort of lost touch for a few years with Scott. Our sons got older and were involved in different activities, and we just didn't see each other very often. Fast forward a few years, meaning move ahead in the storyline a few years, and my ex-husband and I separated. By then, my youngest son was getting involved in Cub Scouts. I happened to see Scott at a football game and told him that he should sign his youngest son up for Cub Scouts. Well, he did, and we both became leaders in the organization to oversee the activities for the boys. This verb, to sign somebody up for something, is here. A few different verbs we can use in Spanish: inscribir or apuntar, to sign up for something. Okay. So Scott and he signed his son up, and we were both involved in the organization. So we started spending a lot of time together, and as they say, the rest is history. That's just an expression that we use in English. We've now been married for 6.5 years, and I'll show you quickly. This is one of the photos from our wedding day. This is my husband, Scott. His father actually married us, and of course, we had all of our kids there with us. So it was a wonderful day. Our story is a bit complicated, but in the end, everyone is settled and happy. When we first met, Scott and I had no idea that one day we would be married. We were both married to other people at the time, so it wasn't even on our radar. Life is funny. Sometimes you truly never know what's going to happen. And I have found that true in every season of life. Okay, often when we talk about how we meet friends or significant others, it's because of work or school. Sometimes it's through other friends that we already have. I have a group of girlfriends that I met at the school I used to work at. We all had classrooms in the same hall and had some students in common. We would talk to each other between classes and before and after school. Sometimes we were able to eat lunch together as well. None of the four of us work at that school anymore, but we try to get together from time to time. Mostly, we stay up to date on each other's lives through text messages and social media. So up to date, like informed, we learn about each other's lives, mostly through text messages or social media, right? That's how we stay up to date on a lot of things in this world, in today's world. Okay, so let's get back to the skill of talking about something that happened in the past. Being able to narrate events in the past in English will undoubtedly enrich your storytelling abilities and enhance your conversational ability. Let's say you attended a party last weekend. If you're telling a story about it for your business audience on social media or in an email, or if you're talking to a friend or family member about it, you're probably going to say more than, "I went to a party Saturday night." You may want to describe where the party was, who else was there, and tell what happened specifically during the party. Additionally, you might make connections between one event and another and share extra thoughts or lessons. The point of this is that you need to be able to not just state what happened, but give extra information or enhance your story. Of course, to do this in English, we use several grammatical pieces. In order to simplify the explanation, and sort of just for fun, I asked ChatGPT to give a breakdown. Most of it is quite simple for advanced learners of English, but a refresher of the basics is never a bad idea. So I'm going to show you what ChatGPT said, and then afterward, I'll show you a video of someone else talking about how they met, so you can put some of this into practice. So stay tuned till the end. Okay, here's what the famous AI software said. When constructing a narrative about a past event, several key grammatical elements come into play. Past tense verbs. The foundation of narrating the past lies in using past tense verbs. Regular verbs typically form the past tense by adding ed to the base form. For example, walk, walked, talk, talked. Irregular verbs, however, do not follow a standard pattern. For instance, go becomes went, eat becomes ate. Familiarizing oneself with common irregular verbs is crucial for accurate past tense usage. And so, probably if you are watching this video or listening to this podcast, you have a good handle on how to form the past tense. There are some irregular verbs, though, that are confusing. And also, I have found when I'm speaking Spanish, for example, that even though you know these in your head, at the moment of speaking, they get lost, right? It's hard to remember them. So the way to combat that is just by practice, just repetition and review and using these verbs over and over. So keep that in mind. Let's go back to the script. Another grammatical structure that you might use: past simple versus past continuous. Past simple is often used to describe completed actions or events in the past. For example, I visited the museum yesterday. Past continuous, on the other hand, is used to express actions that were ongoing or in progress at a specific point in the past. For instance, while I was studying, that's the past continuous, the phone rang, past simple. And that just gives more information about the event you're describing. Time expressions. To provide context and a sense of timeline, incorporating time expressions is essential. Phrases like last summer, yesterday, or in 2019 help anchor the narrative in a specific time frame. Okay. Adverbs and adverbial phrases. Adverbs play a crucial role in detailing the circumstances surrounding the event. They answer questions like how, when, and where. For instance, she spoke eloquently during the conference. So eloquently is an adverb, during the conference, an adverbial phrase. Sequential order and transition words. Narratives flow smoothly when events are presented in a logical sequence. Transition words such as first, then, next, and finally help organize the events and guide the listener or reader through the story. Past perfect tense. The past perfect tense is employed to express an action that occurred before another action in the past. It is formed by using had plus the past participle of the verb. For example, by the time I arrived, they had already started the meeting. So had and the past participle started. So they had already started the meeting by the time I arrived. And descriptive language. To add richness to the narrative, incorporating descriptive language is beneficial. This includes adjectives to describe people, places, and emotions. For instance, the quaint little cafe nestled in the heart of the city was bustling with cheerful patrons. Okay, so this is a very descriptive sentence. Basically, the cafe had a lot of people in it. So what kind of cafe? Quaint, little, charming cafe, nestled in the heart of the city, was bustling. And I put that word here. It just has a lot of activity and people and movement, bustling with cheerful patrons. And it says, remember that crafting a compelling narrative involves a thoughtful combination of these elements. It's not merely about stating facts, but creating a vivid and engaging experience for the audience through well-chosen words and grammatical structures. Okay, so there you have it. I think ChatGPT did a pretty good job reviewing the ins and outs of narrating an event in the past. Hopefully you'll find it useful to share something that you did or something that happened to you, such as how you met your best friend or spouse. So the ins and outs, los pormenores, los detalles. Again, I know it's hard to remember all of these things when all of a sudden you're on the spot and have to speak in English. But again, practice. So you can start out with a sentence and then add to it, add some descriptive language, add some sequence words, maybe put some other details in there, other past perfect tenses, or some more descriptive language, some adverbs, things like that, and just add to it. You can get all the fluency topics for this podcast series on our website, morefluentenglish.com. And don't forget to download the transcript for this episode to increase your understanding. And again, the workbook that has these topics in it, you can find on the website also. And you can print it out and write some notes in there, or use it for practice, or just use the prompts, the questions, to see what you can say about that topic. Let me show you a couple of things before we go. First of all, ChatGPT, if you're not familiar with this AI tool, trying to move this, okay. You just go to openai.com/ChatGPT. And this is what it pulls up here. This is obviously in English. And at the top, you can, where it says try ChatGPT, you click on that, and there'll be like a search bar. And so you can put in any sort of prompt. It gives you examples here. I have found, as I have explored it a little bit, that the more specific you can be, the better. You don't just need to write something, a quick prompt like this. Let me see. Okay. But add details. That's what's important to get a response that is better defined. You need to put in a more defined question or prompt. So, for example, help me plan a fun dinner party. Explain sort of who's going to be there, who will the guests be, what topics to avoid, or what kind of food you want to have, or, you know, what activities might you want to do. So anyway, ChatGPT is fun to play with. It's good, I think, for maybe outlining things, not necessarily to provide an entire script or things like that. Okay, let's look at this one other thing now. This is an Instagram account that I follow. It's called Meet Cutes NYC, and they go around and ask people questions about their relationships, how they met, and different things. So this is one that I want to play for you. They approached this couple and asked, are you a couple? So in other words, are you together? Are you married, or boyfriend and girlfriend, things like that. So they said, yes, we are. And listen to the question now.
Would you mind telling me the quick story of how you first met?
Oh, you're not an Instagram guy that does that, are you?
Yeah. That's...
So would you mind telling me the story of how you met? Okay.
Well, we met on a hayride when we were 16 years old.
We met on a hayride when we were 16 years old. A hayride. In the fall here in the United States, people gather hay, right? Like dried grass, hay, things that horses and cows eat, and put it into like a little trailer and just take rides around fields and things. It's just like a fun little activity to get out and see nature. Okay, so that's what they had done.
Where was the hayride?
Back in South New Jersey.
What,
A million years ago.
and then what happened?
And then what happened, okay? Basic past tense.
We stayed together all these years, and now we live in Manhattan.
Okay, and now they live in Manhattan. So that was in New Jersey. If you know anything about the geography of the United States in the Northeast, you have New York City, and New Jersey is right across the river from New York City. And she says Manhattan. Manhattan is the main, well, the main part. When people think of New York City, usually they're thinking of Manhattan. I'll just say that. It's the island in the middle.
Having a great life.
What'd you do on your first date?
What did you do on your first date? So listen for the past tense.
He took me to see a show in Manhattan when we were only about 16, and then went to a steak place called Tad's.
Okay, so he took me, and then we went.
At
We
steak
had the worst steak in the world. You could barely cut it.
at 16. Who
But
knew?
we didn't know. And we made believe we had a great time. I mean,
We made believe we had a great time, like we pretended we had a great time. And she says, well, we did have a great time.
did have a great time, but we made believe we loved the steak.
And how long ago was this?
Oh,
This was 57 years ago.
yeah.
What's the secret to 57 years together?
Good humor and lots of respect.
Respect.
57 years in, what's your favorite thing about him?
Sense of humor.
What's your favorite thing about her?
She's a wonderful person.
Okay, so they told the story of how they met and what they did on their first date, and now the interviewer is expanding. So not in the past tense anymore, but the present tense, and then sort of talking about the future with this next question.
And what are you most excited for in the future?
Oh,
Seeing
Well.
our grandchildren grow up.
and loving kindness.
And what are your names?
I'm Heidi.
I'm Bob.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I really like that story. Let me close this. Okay, well, that is it. That is this podcast episode. I hope that it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you later. Hasta luego.